Everybody stay calm and no one will be harmed.
What?
Remember what you said in the car?
What?
Something about the plan?
Right. Sorry.
There's the plan, and then there's what actually happens. That is true about everything in life, including editing a film. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the next chapter of Edit Stock Summer School, creating the director's cut of Bingo Night.
Hey! I want your wallets, your cell phones, and your jewelry in this bag now!
The last time we talked, it was about building a rough cut, also known as the editor's cut. During the editor's cut, we learned that the editor's job is to study each scene and figure out what information that scene adds to the film's plot.
How long do I have to come up with the money?
2 weeks.
Then we looked at what story is. Story is the way a character's behavior changes based on how those plot points affect them emotionally. That's our story. Editors have a lot of influence over the film during the rough cut, but they're really limited in some ways. The editor is bound by certain rules that the collaborative and political nature of filmmaking requires of them. The rules are, during the editor's cut, an editor must use at least one instance of every camera angle that was filmed. The reason you do this is because, remember, nothing on a film is shot randomly. Every shot is intentional, so we need to give every shot at least a little bit of chance to be used, even if later on, with the blessing of the director or the producers, we decide we should take that shot out. The editor needs to use every line of dialogue. You can't remove a line without the director's permission. And third, you have to keep every scene in the movie intact and in order. You can't delete a scene and you can't move them around.
Welcome to Ken Kwon-do. I am your sensei, Master Ken.
But once the director gets involved, you're playing by their rules.
He owns you.
This is no place for babies.
No babies.
Don't even think about saying something like, Master Ken, I'm tired.
Too bad.
The director's cut is totally different. The first and most obvious difference between the director's cut and the editor's cut is that now the director is actually in the room, and the director is working collaboratively with the editor. And they'll continue to work beside you through the producer's cut and all other cuts until you lock picture. This gives you a lot more license to make changes to the movie. For example, now it's okay to take out lines of dialogue or move scenes around or to even delete some scenes. We're in a lot more experimental stage of the filmmaking where we're really trying to analyze the story and figure out what changes need to be made to the plot or to the performance of the characters. It's not uncommon during the director's cut to realize that you're missing a key plot point and to try to fix it somehow by adding ADR or by shooting additional scenes or just additional coverage in general.
Listen, I was just wondering, have you had any luck finding a job?
Mom, I think we should move the family to Alaska.
Oh.
It's not like you're going to prison.
Okay, well, enjoy your dinner.
I mean, I know you'll miss your friends when you
Love
leave the
you.
retirement community, but we'll go catch whales with our bare hands and we'll go wrestle penguins.
In order to know what lines and scenes to take out, we need a way of analyzing what constitutes a good line or a good story point. And for that, we need to have a clear understanding of what kind of movie we're trying to make. That starts with coming up with a log line. A log line is a sentence or two description of the movie's plot. The log line for Bingo Night is, Bingo Night is a comedy about Ethel, an elderly woman facing the threat of eviction from her retirement community. Rather than accept life in a discount nursing home, she recruits her friends Vivian and Ruth for the heist of the century. Their target, the local bingo hall. We're going to be referring back to that log line over and over again to see how what's in our movie matches up with that description. According to the screenwriting book Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, who I recommend you all pick up, the number one thing a good log line must have, the single most important element, is irony. And that goes for whether it's a comedy or a drama. Think about it. In Lord of the Rings, who's the least likely person to succeed in getting the Ring of Power from Sauron? It's a hobbit. In Clueless, who's the least likely person to get into law school? It's Cher, and that's Alicia Silverstone's character. So, do we have any irony in Bingo Night? Yes. Who is the least likely person to commit armed robbery?
Sorry.
If you said Ethel, an elderly woman living in her retirement home, you'd be right. So the central premise to our movie does actually offer some great opportunity to be funny. Now let's just quickly walk through the plot of Bingo Night and talk about what each scene means. So in scene 1, Ethel is told that she's losing her apartment in 2 weeks. In scene 2, Ethel's in her car and she's deciding whether or not to sell her jewelry. Scene 3, that's when Ethel actually visits the pawn shop and makes the decision to actually go through with selling her jewelry. Scene 4, that's where the neon sign lights up telling her that the pawn shop sells guns. Scene 5 is where Ethel tries to recruit Vivian during her karate class. And scene 6 is the actual recruitment of Vivian, along with talking her into recruiting Ruth. Scene 7 is where we meet Ruth. Scene 8 is Vivian hit in the face with a pie after Ruth agrees to join the team. Scene 9, Ethel calls her son, who still hasn't found a job. Next, scene 10 through 20, that's the actual heist, that's the robbery. I'm just going to lump these all together. Scene 22, Ethel is in prison already, and now she's trying to stay in prison. And scenes 23 through 29, that's where Ethel is actually already in prison, and she's now trying to figure out how to stay in prison. Now, Bingo Night is 26 scenes long, but a feature-length film can be 100 or 200 scenes long, and it's tremendously difficult to keep the order of those scenes in mind all the time, especially when they start getting moved around in your timeline. That's why editors will often make what are called scene cards. A scene card is just an index card with a printout of one representative image from the scene, along with a few words that describe what's happening in the scene. For example, this would be a good scene card for scene 5, the karate class. Once we have a scene card for every scene in the movie, we're going to hang them on the wall. Sometimes we sit back and just think broadly about the entire film. Should scene 10 be scene 1? Should scene 5 and 6 swap places? That kind of thing. Meanwhile, in your editing software, you want your scene descriptions to match the scene cards that you create. More about the rest of project organization just a little bit later on in the video. Another helpful tool is a document called the continuity. All TV shows have one of these. Any film which can afford to have an assistant editor is also going to have a continuity. A continuity is a shorthand spreadsheet that lays out all of the scenes in the film. The words you write on the scene cards really matter because they become sort of a shorthand for the continuity, which is distributed to the director and the producers, who now all refer to those parts of the movie the same way. For example, a producer might now call scene 5 the karate scene. Another sign of a good movie is that it has a clear beginning, middle, and end. This is called the 3-act structure. In the first act, that's the opening act, our goal is to set up the main character, the world they live in, and figure out what is the conflict. The first act ends once there's an inciting incident. That's some incident that kicks off the plot onto our quest. That brings us to Act 2, the middle, which is sometimes known as the rising action. This is where the main character, in our case Ethel, tries to fix her problem. And because we've got a lot of irony in our movie, it's going to be really hard for her to fix. She's going to have to overcome a lot of obstacles. And that's good. That's what we want. The bigger the obstacle, the more fun it is for the audience to watch her try to overcome that. The second section ends when the main character finally addresses their big problem. They finally take a chance to try to succeed at whatever they've been trying to succeed at for the whole movie. In our movie, that's the robbery. Once the robbery ends, the second act ends, whether she was successful at it or not successful at it. She has accomplished or not accomplished her goal, but she's given it a try. Finally, we're in the third act. The third act is our resolution. We want to tie up all the loose ends in the movie. We want all the story points that have been set up to have an ending. If you have a setup but no payoff, that can really frustrate an audience. The audience wants to know how the character changed. Bingo Night has a great ending. Take a look at the difference in Ethel between scene 1 and now when she's a confident, seasoned, professional criminal.
I figured out a way that we can stay.
Now, albeit, it's not like we wanted her to be a criminal, but we can see that she's changed. She has no problems taking action. Every year I watch 1 million short films as part of a recruitment effort to get movies onto Edit Stock. And I can tell you honestly that building the 3-act structure is among the biggest challenges that directors have. But every now and then you find a gem in there. Not that I got this movie, but last year I watched a commercial that I think perfectly illustrates how to execute a 3-act story. And it did it in 30 seconds. Take a look.
Hey. Out. Out. Get.
Did you find everything okay, sir? What?
Have a good day, sir.
This Doritos commercial set up Act 1, that's the dog's problem, in the first 4 seconds of the commercial with just 3 shots. The dogs want to get into the store, but they can't. Act 2, the rising action, shows the dogs attempting to get into the store and failing. Finally, in Act 3, we have our resolution. The dogs overcame the obstacle. Now that we have that big idea in mind, let's dig into Bingo Night a little more granularly and see if we can't hone the story a bit tighter. I'm not going to go through every scene, but I do want to highlight about half a dozen or so of them and see how we can improve what's already been in the film. And I mind you, this is the final cut of the film that we'll be adjusting.
I'm really sorry that your son lost his job, okay? I truly am.
Then why can't you be more understanding?
We've been understanding.
He'll find another one.
And when he does, you're more than welcome to come back. You know, you might not believe me, but the public nursing home, it's not that bad.
I don't believe you. How long do I have to come up with the money?
2 weeks.
Scene 1 we've discussed a lot, and we know that the scene absolutely has to be in the movie. But how do we know that? In order to determine if this scene should stay in the movie, we need a mental checklist. First, who's this scene about? It's about Ethel, the main character. That's really good because our logline says that this is a story about Ethel. If the scene isn't about one of the main characters, that's a big sign that we probably need to cut it out of the movie. Next, does this scene move the plot forward? That is to say, what new information do we get out of this scene that we need to tell the story? And is that information related to the logline? Does this scene help tell the story of why Ethel is going to rob the bingo parlor? This is the checkbox you're going to rely on the most. Remember, story is how the plot affects the characters. We want Ethel to have as big a change as possible at the end of the film. Maybe that means, despite what the script says, that they're having a heated conversation, we need to re-edit Ethel's performance so that she's more meek and less proactive.
Look, I'm really sorry your son lost his job, and I truly am. You know, you might not believe me, but the public nursing home, It's not that bad.
How long do I have to come up with the money?
2 weeks.
Totally different cut, right? And you're just not allowed to make that kind of a cut during the rough cut. And you probably don't even know to make a performance adjustment like that, because how could you until you've seen the entire movie laid out on the timeline? And that brings me to the third question that we need to ask, which is this scene so emotional or so funny that even if it doesn't advance the plot too much, is it still entertaining enough that we have to keep it in the movie? If the scene satisfies the first two check boxes, then this third is really only used as a catch-all. In this case, scene 1 is totally okay to keep. So we know the scene should stay in the movie now. The next question we have to ask ourselves, is it in the right place? And for that, we need to look back at our 3-act structure. Act 1 looks like it's only one scene, so have we moved a little too fast? If we could maybe add a scene that sets up Ethel's character a little more before we show her getting kicked out, we probably have time for that. If we wanted to experiment with a change, I might look at the entire movie's scene cards and think to myself, when else is she in the nursing home? And there is actually one scene, that's scene 9. So I might consider taking scene 9 and moving it before scene 1 so that we have a little bit more build up in Act 1, sort of balance out our story. It might add a little character development, especially if she's doing something that makes her really likable. I'm not saying that that's better than what was actually done in the final movie. I'm just saying that's the approach you take when you're thinking about shuffling around scenes. Let's just watch what happens if we take scene 9 and move it in front of scene 1.
Hi, sweetie. It's Grandma. You did? All by yourself? Honey, is Daddy there? Okay, thank you. Hi. Oh, she sounds so grown up. Listen, I was just wondering, have you had any luck finding a job? Oh. Okay, well, enjoy your dinner. Love you.
I'm really sorry that your son lost his job, okay? I truly am.
Then why can't you be more understanding?
We've been understanding.
He'll find another one.
And when he does, you're more than welcome to come back. You know, you might not believe me, but the public nursing home, it's not that bad.
I don't believe you. How long do I have to come up with the money?
2 weeks.
Whoa, right? That changes the beginning of the movie completely. Now that we've watched this, I want to point out one more thing. She's knitting the masks that they're going to wear later during the robbery. That said, you're always going to be fighting little bits of bad continuity that you're trying to fix or adjust for, but you should always let the story triumph over any continuity error like that. Let's move on to scene 2. Ethel in the car deciding to sell her jewelry. So do we keep it or lose it? Let's go through our check sheet. Who is this scene about? It's about Ethel. Does the scene move the story forward? Well, it is about her plot. She's about to sell this jewelry box. And is this scene so emotional that it's too good to lose? It's pretty emotional. She's sad. Now, nothing major happens in this scene, so we could certainly consider cutting it out entirely. If we took it out, it would look a little something like this.
How long do I have to come up with the money?
2 weeks.
Axel. Axel!
What?
That sign was supposed to go on 20 minutes ago.
Isn't that amazing? You'd never know scene 2 was taken out. When you're working from a sense of understanding the story, it's just incredible the power you have to remove a scene or move a scene and just how that can change your entire act structure. However, if you're not sure and you want to try a version by cutting this scene out, what you'd be looking for is, did we miss it? This is one of the tests an editor can use to judge the value of a scene. What happens if we take it out? Do we miss the scene? If the answer is no, which it is shockingly a lot of the time, then you should keep it out. Now I want to look at something a little more granular. I want to look at what happens when something within a scene isn't quite working right. And for that, we're going to need scene 3, which is perfect because we happen to be there anyway. Let's watch scene 3 as it is before we ask ourselves our 3-question checklist.
Axel. Axel!
What?
That sign was supposed to go on 20 minutes ago.
Fuck do I care? I'm working on a high score here, man.
Hey, watch your fucking mouth. Get your ass over there and fix that timer. Kissy stays. Cash or trade?
Cash.
See what I can do.
That's it?
I think we can make a clear case for keeping the pawn shop scene as a whole. The scene is about Ethel. It moves the plot forward because she's selling her jewelry, so that's an obstacle she has to overcome. And it's emotionally challenging for her. This would be a tough thing for her to do. But what's this section with Axel all about?
Axel. Axel!
What?
That sign was supposed to go on 20 minutes ago.
Fuck do I care? I'm working on a high score here, man.
Hey, watch your fucking mouth. Get your ass over there and fix that timer. Kissy stays. Cash or trade?
Cash.
It took me watching this movie a lot of times before I realized that Axel was there to turn on the timer to the sign outside that says guns. But how clear is that? And should we be focusing our attention on Axel? Axel's a character who never comes back in the movie. So let's run through our test again. The first question, who are the lines about? It's about Axel, who is completely irrelevant to our story. And what information do we learn? That he's going to go turn on the pawn shop sign. So how relevant is that? It's not. I mean, I didn't even understand what it was at first. Next, is this scene so funny or so dramatic that we have to keep it in the movie? It's not. It's not. So I would focus on cutting Axel out of this scene. Maybe if you wanted to keep the plot point of just turning the sign on and then get back to the main storyline, you could just cut out a little bit of the argument between the pawn shop owner and Axel and just have the pawn shop owner yell over to him, hey, get out and go turn on the sign, and that can be enough. Here are some examples of what we could do to fix this scene. We could cut Axel out completely.
Cash or trade?
Cash.
See what I can do.
That's it?
Or we could reduce Axel to a small enough role that all we're doing is telling the audience the information of, hey Axel, go turn on the sign.
Axel, that sign was supposed to go on 20 minutes ago. Get your ass over there and fix that timer. Kissy stays. Cash or trade?
cash.
See what I can do.
That's it?
All right, scene 4. Scene 4 is a oneer. A oneer is a scene that was filmed from just one camera angle. They're both sort of fun to get because as the editor you know like, there's not a lot to edit. And they're also a challenge because there's not a lot you can do to fix them if they're broken. The goal of a oneer is usually to make it as short as possible. Here, I love what the editor did with the gun sign. The out point of the scene comes right after the light turns on. The editor also added a little buzzing sound effect to turn our attention to the sign, which is the point of the whole scene. We need the scene so that we know that this is where she buys the gun. But we also don't need the end of the scene where she walks back into the store because it's a little boring. All right, scene 5 is the karate scene. Let's watch the locked cut of scene 5 and then decide if we want to delete the scene or if we want to alter any of the characters' performances.
Welcome to Ken Kwon-do. I am your sensei, Master Ken. For the next 25 minutes, I own you.
He owns you.
This is no place for babies.
No babies.
Don't even think about saying something like, Master Ken, I'm tired.
Too bad.
Master Ken, my knees are sore.
Oh.
Master Ken, I have a plastic hip, and if I fall, I could die.
Grow a pair already.
I don't care. Because you know who else doesn't care? Serial rapers.
Rapers.
But after this class, they will care about one thing only. What you can do with your fists! Ha! Fists up! 1, 2! 1, 2! 1, 2! 1, 2! Ken Kwon-do is no place for socializing!
Sorry.
1, 2, head! 1, 2, head! 1, 2, head!
I'll see you at the class.
All right, that's enough! You've disrespected Master Ken and the Ken Kwon Dojo. Leave! No, don't bow. Get out of here! 1, 2, 1, 2.
This scene is interesting to run it through our keep it or lose it checklist. First, who's the scene about? Well, it's about Ethel, and it's also an introduction to Vivian, who's going to become a character in this. But is it really only about these two? No. The scene is really more about Master Ken than anything else. And Master Ken doesn't come back in the movie. So we can argue that he's similar to Axel. He's worth cutting out. Now, does the scene move the plot forward? Again, no, not really. I would argue that it doesn't really, at least not too much. All that we learn is that Ethel wants to speak to Vivian after class. That's it. They don't really change in this class. It's not like they learn some important karate lesson that they're then going to employ later on in the movie, say during the theft. And so here we come to our third question. Is this scene funny or dramatic enough that we should keep it in the movie just because it's entertaining? And here I would say yes, definitely it is. Master Ken is hilarious.
I don't care. Because you know who else doesn't care? Serial rapers.
Rapers.
But after this class, they will care about one thing only. What you can do with your fists! Ha!
This might be one of those scenes that the people who go see this movie are really going to remember as a highlight to the movie. They might be quoting Master Ken later because he's really funny. So my vote is to leave this scene in the movie, but I'm sure that the filmmakers struggled with it. The last scene I want to talk about is scene 9. That's when Ethel calls her son.
Hi, sweetie. It's Grandma. You did? All by yourself? Honey, is Daddy there? Okay, thank you. Hi. Hey. Oh, she sounds so grown up. Listen, I was just wondering, have you had any luck finding a job? Oh. Okay, well, enjoy your dinner. Love you.
As always, we're going to run this through our test. So, who's this scene about? It's about Ethel. Great. That's very good. Does it move the story forward? It certainly does. It adds information about the status of her son. He still hasn't found a job, and he's still in trouble. So, is the scene funny or dramatic? Yes-ish. It's not the most dramatic scene in the movie, and it's certainly not the funniest. But this is the only other time in the movie we're going to talk about her son. So, it does help us build that plot line at least just a little bit more. If you're taking this class and you're also a director, I just want to point out one thing. Typically, I would advise against using phone calls as a way to tell the story or move the story forward. Most of the time, phone call scenes get cut out. And the reason is, you're just kind of saying the exposition of the movie. You're not really showing it happen. You're not really doing anything. But there is something that just doesn't sit well with me about Scene 9. In Scene 9, the information that we're telling the audience comes just a little too late, right? Ethel's already sold her jewelry. She's already bought a gun. She's already recruited friends, and she has her plot. She's pretty committed to going through with the act of robbing the bingo parlor. So this scene might actually have more impact if we move it up in the movie earlier, before she sells all her jewelry, or before she recruits her friends. Or maybe we just cut it out, because we already know all the information that's in this scene. In other words, maybe the information in this scene as a whole is good, but maybe it's repetitive information. And generally, you want to take out repetitive information. This week, I'm giving you guys a timeline of the entire edited movie. Your job is to build a continuity and find 3 places in the final film that you would want to change structurally, and then change them and turn the film in. You don't have to do any sound work. I also want to make sure that you've edited up to scene 10. You don't have to edit the heist yet. Stop at scene 10. All right, I'll see you next time.